Keeping your computer clean isn't just about removing unwanted entries in the registry. Keeping it physically clean is also a good idea. The keyboard can become very unpleasant, and dust inside the case will reduce performance and potentially lead to overheating. Now, the dirtiest part of your computer is almost certainly the keyboard. Most of us have eaten in front of the computer from time to time, or even worse, our children have. Add general drying to the crumbs and the dirt soon mounts up. Now, just wiping the keys with a cloth is unlikely to remove more than a superficial amount of grime, and even wiping between the keys with a cotton wool bud is only really slightly better. When a keyboard is really dirty, the only reasonable way to clean it is to remove the keys. Now, it's a good idea to take a photo of the keyboard before you do this. Even if you're a touch typist, there are likely to be extra keys whose location might be harder to remember. A small screwdriver should be the right size to prise off the keys. And once you get the first one off, the others will be much easier to remove. Like so. Now, the keys themselves are just plastic, so you can safely wash them in water and you won't damage them. One trick is to put them in a bag and wash them in the washing machine. Alternatively, a bowl of washing up water and a toothbrush should be enough to get them clean again, especially if, like mine, there's grime around the edges of the keys. While they're drying, turn your attention to the inside of the keyboard. It's not a good idea to get this part too wet, so wipe around with a damp cloth after having shaken out as much dust and crumbs into the bin as you can. Once everything is dry, replace the keys. You'll probably find that the keyboard is now much easier to type on, as the keys won't be restricted by dirt. Once you've done that, you've now completed the messiest part of cleaning a computer. Everything else is easier, or at least less unpleasant from now on. With the keyboard out of the way, it's time to turn your attention to the computer itself, and it seems wherever you leave them, computers gather large amounts of dust. A surprising amount of air passes through the case to keep it cool, and it always wants to leave its dust behind. We've even seen spider webs inside computers, though we don't really understand why that is. The dust will clog up vents and stop fans from working properly. Frequent cleaning isn't really required here, but it makes a good yearly project. Now, opening up a computer can be dangerous for both it and you. Never open the power supply at the top of the case, ever. Once that case is opened, there is live metal exposed, and the capacitors inside can give you a nasty shock even after the power has been unplugged. Give it a blast of compressed air if it looks really dusty, but if you can, please leave it alone. Disconnect the power from the computer and discharge any static from yourself. You can use an anti-static wrist strap for this, or simply tuck some earthed metal such as a bare radiator pipe. It's a good idea to make sure you've got enough space to lay out the computer and the different parts. Pay particular attention to where screws come from. Don't assume that all the screws on a single part will be the same, and we've learnt that lesson the hard way. You can remove the side of the case by taking off the screws on the side, and then it will simply slide off. Now, the parts that generally need the most attention are the heatsink of the CPU. If there's any dust caught in the metal fins of the heatsink, give it a blast with the compressed air, and the fins of the plastic fan can simply be cleaned with a cotton wool bud or a cloth. Wipe the edges to make sure that they're still performing well. You may also find there's a fan on the back here, and you can clean that in exactly the same way. Now, if anything on the motherboard looks dusty, don't be tempted to wipe it with a fan. Give it another blast of compressed air to dislodge any dust. While you're working with the inside of the computer, you can improve the cooling inside by tying back the cables so they're arranged more neatly. You can do this with a cable tie. There's lots of different kinds available. We're going to use a reusable cable tie. They're a little bit more expensive, but it does mean that you won't have to waste them if you ever come to upgrade the insides of the computer. Simply collect together the cables and tie them up. And this will help improve the airflow. Then replace the side of the PC. And hopefully your PC will be running cooler and quieter than it was before, now that there's less dust inside.